What's up, Metalheads? Welcome to my channel. I'm Lynn Stahl of Metalhead Minis. In this video today, we're going to go over how I went about painting a wooden box with some metal around the edges. This was a model that I painted during my Twitch stream. Here's the reference art that was used, found on Google, by the way. Now, people who watched the stream were kind of requesting to have it put up on YouTube, so that way they can refer to it later, because people really liked how this box came out, and so we figured it'd be a good way to share this with you as well. You're going to notice that there's some parts of the video that's going to be time-lapsed and sped through quickly, just so that you guys get the basic gist. To start to base coat the box, I started off with Vallejo Model Air in the color Leather Brown. Now, I found that this color, even though it's called Leather Brown, it's actually a really good color for wood. At least for this color wood that we're doing. I also like that since it's an airbrush paint, it comes out a little thinned out of the bottle, which makes for a smoother application. To cover all the surfaces, I did about, I want to say, 3 coats. In the next step, to paint the metal around, and forgive the blurriness, I'm sorry, it's my stream camera there. That's GW's Lead Belcher. That's a really good silver. If you don't have it, you really need it. And I used Frontline Games thinner. It's called Capillarity Agent, but it's basically thinner, and that's what I used to smooth out and thin down the paint. But yeah, my other stream camera burnt out, and now with that one, and you have to futz around with the focus in order for it to work, so forgive. So anyway, so there's Lead Belcher. Like I said, a perfect silver because it's not too dark and it's not too light. So it really gives you a good amount of leeway when it comes to if you want to shade it down more, if you want to highlight it up, then you don't really have to go too far to do either or. All right? Now you want to make sure to get all the metal areas. I want to say I did about 2 coats to cover all that up, for the metal part, that is. Because I thinned down the Lead Belcher, but I didn't thin it down too much. And you don't really want to do that with some metallics anyway, because then the flake will end up, you know, floating around everywhere, and then it makes painting metallics a total pain in the ass. So. Ah, yes, looking good. So now we're getting ready to get on to the next step. So what I did next was I took GW Agrax Earthshade, basically the Frank's Red Hot of paint, as I like to say. Well, actually, I'm not the only one that says it. Actually, quite a few people do. Anyway, so I take the Agrax Earthshade, and just like you do with washes, just go all over the surface. Let it go into the recessed areas there. Now you see that there's an emblem, you know, a logo that's on there on all the surfaces of that wooden box. Well, wait till we get to that fun part of how you do that burnt wood part. I think you guys are going to like that. But anyway, go ahead with the Agrax Earthshade. Make sure you cover all the surfaces. Make sure you get into all the lines in the wood, the whole shebang. And mind you, this is gaming quality, like type painting. To even maybe a little bit on the higher tabletop side, this is not display level. Although, if you want to go the display level route, you can do all the steps that I showed you, that I'm going to show you here, and then to add to it, you can do things like freehand in the wood grain and things like that. So those are ways that you can add to this type of box, okay? Again, assuming that you want to go that far. But if you're just using it for the game, you seriously don't have to go crazy. There's that Agrax Earthshade. Looking good. Ah, yes, looking good. Now we're gonna get ready to do some shading on the metallic, on the metal frame. Okay, so the Vallejo Model Wash in Dark Rust. If you don't have the Vallejo Model Washes, you totally need them. My favorite ones are the rust ones, and then they have a dark green, which I use for quite a few different applications. As a matter of fact, I mix it in with the rust here, which you're gonna see me do in a second. And then I believe I also added in some Agrax Earthshade and a little bit of Nuln Oil, because I wanted the metallic, you know, the metal rather, to look dirty, a little rusty, like it's a box that was out on a dock, okay? So you see how that looks there, like a dark brownish red. And as I went along though in the stream, I did add a little bit of Agrax Earthshade and a little bit of Nuln Oil, so. And so I go over the whole, all the metal there. And then once that dried, I went over it again, the metal, with just Nuln Oil. Don't be afraid to do things like stack up, or I should say layer on shades, washes, inks, and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to do stuff like that, especially when it comes to doing things like a sort of weathering, if you will, that you see going on here. Don't be afraid to do that stuff, because you'd be surprised what kind of effects you can get. Now, one other thing I want to point of note. So that mix that I did with the washes, if you look, I made sure to only focus on like the bottom 2/3 there. I didn't go all the way to the top. And on the top part, I only focused on certain parts of the metal. Like I didn't do the whole thing. And it's because I want it to look like dirt, weathering. It's been outside on a shipping dock or what have you. And so it would stand to reason that with the weather, that it would have that kind of dirty, rusty look towards the bottom parts of the metal, okay? And you see me go over it a few times. Now see, there's the Nuln Oil right there. That's just Nuln Oil that I'm doing on all the top parts there, and I'm layering it over, as you can see, on that dirty, rusty looking part, and it's because I want it to obviously tie together. The next thing I do is I take GW's Nylock Oxide, which is basically like a verdigris, and I put it on some of those bolts, screws, whatever you want to call them there, okay? And I don't do it on every one of them, as you can see, because it would also stand to a reason that there would be some kind of oxidation or corrosion happening there, right? So that's why I added in that Nylock Oxide. It also adds a little bit more visual interest. If you don't have Nylock Oxide, you could also use like a teal colored ink or wash, and that'll totally work fine as well. So you see there's some parts I applied it heavy, but what I did was in some areas I went back in with the damp brush, cleaned, and then wiped off some excess. So I did do some of that as well. See, I put it underneath there. I purposely made it look uneven because if it was weathered, it obviously wouldn't be perfect, right? That wouldn't make any sense. You see that there? Now what I did was I'm taking some of that dark green Vallejo Model Wash, just the green, and I'm focusing on just the bottom half of the box. What you're gonna see me do in these next steps when it comes to just doing that is I keep going back and forth in with the washes using green. I've used Agrax Earthshade, I use some Nuln Oil, and I keep going back and forth between the three colors, layering one on top of the other, mixing the green sometimes with the Agrax Earthshade, and just kind of going back and forth. I even added in a little bit of that rust model wash and kind of glazed it in. You see me dipping through the different ones there, and I just keep layering it on. Definitely did the top because obviously that would be shadowed, so yeah, that makes sense, right? And also the weathering would happen on the top, sure, that makes sense. And watch, as you see me go along, I just focus on the bottom half. It don't look like much at first, but when it comes to washes and glazes and stuff, you have to have patience. You got to let it dry also. That's something a lot of people don't do. I mean, there is the wet blending aspect, sure, but when it comes to doing stuff like this, you want it to layer up. So forgive the long pause of movement in between, but I did want to make sure to get those points across because you'd be surprised how many people don't do that. So here you see me do some mixing up like I told you. And I'm just layering it on, focusing on the bottom half. And you see how as I build it up, the wood on the box is starting to look more aged and weathered, right? Don't be afraid to also use other things like pigment powders in addition to the washes and inks. Like you see me using washes and inks. If you wanted to, you can use all those same things I'm showing you. And in addition, use pigment powders in dirt color, in rust colors. That's perfectly fine too. And look at it under different light also. Like, I mean, I have the lamps and everything, but you want to move it around in your hand and look at it and kind of make sure you're happy with it. Because you don't want to sit there and just look at it one sort of way, you know, with one angle or what have you, and then turn around and next thing you know, you put it in a different angle and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Oh, here's the fun part. Okay, so Inktense wood, Inktense black, and then some Inktense violet. Now in the stream, I'm telling the people something a little bit about what I'm using. Because at first people would think just use the brown and the black, and you can, but you want to use some of that violet too, that Inktense violet. Not only because it'll tie in with the other colors that I was using, you know, the green, the brown, and what have you, but it also creates more visual interest and makes that burned in logo with the wood look even more realistic, believe it or not. Some people at first on the stream, they were like, huh, violet, huh? But I've tested it out before and it works out really well. It looks really good. So I'm purposely showing you there in the palette. It mixing it up. I did put more brown than the black and the violet. The violet I added the least. But watch when it mixes up. Now on the camera there, it probably looks like really dark brown or black, right? But it is, but because I added in that violet, it actually added in a little bit of a richness to it. Nice looking dark, rich brown, right? See? So I took a fine detail brush because obviously I don't want this mixture to go everywhere. I'm doing it specifically to do that burnt in logo look, okay? And you're gonna make sure you got a good point on your brush and you just steadily and gently go in. And you see, I'm going, and I purposely, I didn't speed up this exact part because I wanted you to see me carefully go into each spot. Okay? Now that you get the general idea, now we can speed through. And you also might have to do a couple of coats in order for it to be relatively even. That's key. You don't want it to be perfectly even, because when a logo is burnt into wood, it's obviously not going to be perfectly even burnt all around, right? So you want it to be relatively even, because you want it to look good, you want it to stand out. So that's what you want to do on all the surfaces there, on all sides. As well as you can on the top too, just so that you're aware, because obviously her body is over it, so you're pretty much, you know, just get as much as you can of it. And you can use that same mixture, as you can see, to fill in the lines of the wood. If you like our tutorials, and I hope that you do, there are more tutorials. As a matter of fact, there's a playlist that you are welcome to check out. I encourage you to do so. Please be sure to give this video a like. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe. We do other kinds of videos too, unboxings, reviews. We post other fun stuff, and then hopefully once we're all allowed to travel again, continue doing walkthroughs of conventions. And of course, like I said, this video is clips that came from our Twitch channel. Sorry, I can't talk today. So be sure to follow us on Twitch also. Metalhead Minis, all one word. And please feel free to put in the comments below, perhaps what other tutorials you'd like to see. Again, we hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to paint your wooden boxes if you have any for your minis in your games. And have yourselves a safe, happy, and healthy fall.